Let's get started. Close all the stuff that I'm doing here. Okay, everybody stop. Yep. Okay, welcome to our presentation on the proposed Grand Central Landfill expansion, subtitle Public Participation, Public Power. This is me. My name is Bridget Meyer. I'm a staff attorney in PennFuture's Poconos office. My work focuses mainly on land use and municipal stuff, as well as water quality and watershed protection. Prior to joining PennFuture, I was an associate attorney at a law firm in Chester County, where I focused on municipal and land use law. So no surprise, that's going to be mostly what we're talking about tonight. So I wanted to start out by giving a little bit of background about this landfill expansion that we are all talking about. I think some of you may know more about this than I do, but just in case, so we all get on the same page, we are talking about the landfill that has existed on this site in Plainfield Township since about 1951, and it is currently owned and operated by Waste Management. The landfill currently operates or occupies about 537 acres, and that includes a capped landfill, an operating landfill, other permitted landfill areas that are not the actual disposal area, an energy center, and also some setback and buffer areas. This is one of 3 landfills serving the Lehigh Valley, and it accepts waste from the Lehigh Valley, New Jersey, Monroe County, other Pennsylvania counties, and other states. And I have there on the screen the proportion of the waste that comes from each of those locations. So the greatest proportion comes from Lehigh Valley, then New Jersey, Monroe County, and then smaller amounts from other parts of Pennsylvania and a very little bit from other states. Why are we not person? There we go. So the big picture of this expansion proposal is that the existing landfill is predicted to reach its permitted capacity in about 4 years. So essentially the landfill is going to run out of space in that time. So Waste Management is proposing to transition its operations from the existing landfill site to a new expanded area, and then as the expanded area comes online, the existing landfill will cease to be used and will be covered over and vegetated. Waste Management predicts that the expansion that they are seeking would provide the landfill with an additional 20 years of operating life. So in order to make this a reality, Waste Management would need a number of approvals from Plainfield Township and also from the Department of Environmental Protection. And we are going to talk tonight mainly about the approvals that would be required from Plainfield Township, touch a little bit later at the very end about the DEP permits that would be required. So we'll start with what Waste Management is requesting from Plainfield Township at this moment. There are essentially 2 things that they are asking for right now. One, they want to make changes to the existing requirements for landfills that are in the Plainfield Township zoning ordinance. And they would also like to rezone additional property to allow for the actual landfill expansion. Later on, depending on how this goes, there might be other processes, and we will talk about those later in the presentation. So, as of now, we are here. What the only sort of active thing that is happening, that there is an opportunity for public participation that we know of, is that Waste Management has requested changes to the existing requirements for landfills. Oh, sorry. And I want to make sure that we know that this is kind of the ground level, and we can actually maximize public power by participating in these processes now, early on in the game. The greatest ability to influence the outcome of land use processes comes at the beginning, so at this stage when ordinances are being considered. The ordinances are what set the rules of the game for any future land development proposals that happen. So if you can influence the rules that apply later, you have a good deal of control over how things happen later. When it comes to actually having specific proposals that are put on the table, both the township and the public become more limited in what they can do to control and change the outcome of the plan because the rules are already set. So everyone who's here tonight, you're doing the right thing because we're all getting in on the ground floor. So let's talk about the August 27th hearing that is scheduled. So many, if not all of you, probably know that this is a thing that's happening. This will be at the Plainfield Township Fire Company Hall at 6 o'clock on August 27th. So that's about, what, 2 weeks from now? A little less than 2 weeks. And at that hearing, the Board of Supervisors is going to consider two proposed ordinances. One has been numbered ordinance number 427, and that is the idea behind that ordinance is that it would change landfills from conditional uses to permitted uses in the zoning district where they're allowed. Ordinance number 428 would exempt landfills from steep slope requirements. And we're going to talk about both of those in more detail in a minute. So hold on. The actual rezoning of the additional property, it has been requested and proposed. This is ordinance number 426. That is actually not on the agenda for the hearing on the 27th. Presumably, the township will eventually schedule that hearing, but the hearing that is happening on the 27th is actually not dealing with that particular aspect of all of this. So let's talk about ordinance 427 to start out with. Really, this has to do entirely with the difference between a conditional use and a permitted use. It's my exciting animation. So essentially, a zoning ordinance breaks land uses into three different categories based on whether or not they're allowed in a given zoning district and what the process is for getting zoning approval. The categories are a permitted use, a conditional use / special exception, which are essentially the same thing, but are decided by different bodies. So conditional uses are decided by the Board of Supervisors. Special exceptions are decided by the zoning hearing board. It's essentially the only difference, so they're lumped together as one thing. And then there are prohibited uses. And I kind of like to think about this as like a traffic light. So a prohibited use is, as it sounds, prohibited in the zoning district where it is prohibited. So that's like a red light. There's no going forward with the prohibited use. Conditional uses and special exceptions, that's kind of like your yellow light uses. So they are allowed, but there's more process and more hurdles in between getting an application and getting an approval. So that is why they're kind of in the middle as yellow light. And then permitted uses are the green light type of use. They are the easiest to get approved. There's the least amount of process involved with those. How the uses are designated can vary by zoning district. So you might have a particular use, say a commercial establishment or a restaurant that is a permitted use in one district, a conditional use in a different district, and prohibited in another. So this is all about where certain things can be located and how much process we need to approve them in different locations. So since ordinance 427 deals with the distinction between permitted uses and conditional uses, we'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. Permitted uses are also called by right uses, and these are uses where the zoning officer can review the zoning application. So when somebody wants to build something and they approach the township and say, I would like to build this thing in this location, it's the zoning officer that reviews that to decide whether or not that use is allowed in that location. Then the zoning officer can issue a zoning permit without getting the Board of Supervisors involved or a public hearing or anyone else. This all sort of happens behind the scenes without public involvement. Typically, permitted uses are those where there's a minimal amount of impact expected from the use. So, like single family homes or small retail businesses in the commercial district, the assumption is that, when built in accordance with the zoning ordinance, this is not going to create some kind of massive impact on the community. So we don't need to go through a huge rigmarole to get it approved. It's fine just to make sure that they check all the boxes in the zoning ordinance. The zoning officer can take care of that. It's all done. For these uses, the zoning officer or anybody, nobody can impose additional conditions to approval beyond what is required by the zoning ordinance. So as long as the use meets all the requirements in the ordinance, that's it. It's approved. They can't go beyond that. So in contrast, we have conditional uses. It's important to know that conditional uses are approved uses. They are not prohibited. They are uses that are allowed under the zoning ordinance, but there are some more hurdles and process that they have to go through just to make sure that they are in fact complying with the zoning ordinance. So the big thing is that conditional uses require zoning approval from the Board of Supervisors. And before the Board of Supervisors approves or denies a conditional use, they have to hold a public hearing. And the way the public hearing works is it's almost like a mini trial. It's pretty formal. The applicant, the person who wants to build the use, will come forward with evidence, usually in the form of plans or witnesses like engineers or architects or whoever is relevant to the particular project. They come forward, they testify at the hearing about what the project is going to involve and how it complies with the zoning ordinance. At this hearing, certain members of the public who meet certain requirements also have the option of presenting evidence and also questioning the applicant's representatives at the hearing. And then at the end of the hearing, if the applicant fails to demonstrate that the project will comply with the zoning ordinance, or if the public comes forward with evidence that there's a high probability that the use will generate significant harms that are not normally generated by the type of use. So if this is, a landfill that is not just going to create the kind of impacts of a typical landfill, but is going to go sort of above and beyond and be like an extremely impactful landfill. In both of those situations, the Board of Supervisors will deny the conditional use. If the Board of Supervisors approves the use, if they determine that it complies with the zoning ordinance, then they do have the option of imposing reasonable conditions. So these are different things that the developer would have to satisfy that go a little bit beyond what's spelled out in the zoning ordinance, but might be necessary depending on what is proposed for a specific project. So, for instance, limiting the operating hours of a use might be something that's a condition. So I put this all in a handy chart. This basically just explains all of the same things that I just said, so I won't belabor it, but it's there in the video later if anyone wants to go back and refer to it. So returning to ordinance number 427, now that we know the difference between a permitted and a conditional use, what WM is requesting with ordinance 427 is to change landfills to permitted uses in the solid waste disposal district, which is abbreviated SW. So under the current ordinance, only smaller landfills that involve disposal of 100 or fewer tons of waste per day are permitted uses, and then everything else is a conditional use. What they want to do is make everything a permitted use, so to kind of take away this additional process that the landfill would have to go to get zoning approval. All the actual requirements that are in the ordinance would essentially stay the same, except the current ordinance actually requires the disposal zone of large landfills to be at least 300 feet from occupied dwellings. Ordinance number 427 actually doesn't include that and would require only 100 feet. That might have been an oversight, but that's the way it's written right now. So essentially, what this ordinance would do is just remove the extra approval process that the landfill would require. Um, since we mentioned the requirements that the landfill has to meet, I have sort of a little bit of a detour from the main thrust of the presentation to explain what those requirements are and where one can find them. You So the requirements that would be applicable here are found in the Plainfield Township zoning ordinance. And Plainfield Township has kindly put this online for all of us. So if you go to the Plainfield Township website, plainfieldtownship.org, on the homepage you will see this banner that scrolls through different photos. And there's a couple circles down here with stuff you can click on. Right over here we have the button that says ordinances. Click on that, you'll get to this page that tells you some stuff about the ordinance. And if you click on this thing here, you will get taken to actually a different website, ecode360.com, which is a website that a lot of municipalities use to put their zoning ordinances and other ordinances online. So that will take you there. You will be on this page that has the Plainfield Township Code. If you scroll down over here in the table of contents to chapter 27, you'll get to zoning, or you can click on it over here, however you like. This is the exciting part of the presentation where I explain how to navigate a website. If you are looking for the requirements that apply to a landfill, you want to be in section 27-319, Solid Waste Processing and Disposal District, SW. And if you click on that, you'll get a whole page that goes through all of the different requirements that apply in this zoning district. There are actually also some additional requirements in the following section, 27-320. If you scroll down to subsection 5I, this here lists all of the requirements that apply to a sanitary landfill. So these requirements would be staying the same regardless of whether Ordinance 427 is enacted. The only difference would be whether it's the zoning officer who decides whether these requirements are met, or whether the Board of Supervisors holds a public hearing in front of all of you to make the developer prove that these requirements are being met and allows the public to participate in that process. Personally, I'm a fan of conditional uses, but you can have your own opinions on that, I guess. So that brings us to ordinance number 428, which is the other ordinance that the Board of Supervisors is going to consider on August 27th. And this would exempt landfills from requirements that are related to steep slopes in the township. That's defined as slopes greater than 15%. And the zoning ordinance contains certain requirements that apply to disturbing the steep slopes. So they include a requirement that the zoning hearing board approve any development of landfills on slopes between 15 and 25%. There's a flat out prohibition against landfills on slopes greater than 25%, and then additional limitations about what can be built in steep slope areas, like how much of the trees you can remove, and there also has to be a grading plan approved by the township. So those are all the requirements in the existing ordinance. Ordinance 428 would make it so that landfills do not have to comply with these requirements. It just says, their landfills are exempt. We're not worried about that. The reasoning behind it, I guess, is that they believe that the DEP permitting process will take care of the same things that the steep slope ordinance is intended to address. So this is, why am I not progressing? Next slide. There we go. Here's a very bad resolution map that shows this is the area that they would like to rezone for the new landfill in this blue circle. And the steep slopes are in yellow and red, the 15% in yellow and then greater than 25% in red. So there are steep slopes on this site, and clearly they're interested in not having to worry about these steep slopes if and when they develop this for a landfill. So they just want to erase that requirement from the ordinance. So let's talk about what the August 27th hearing will probably look like. As I've mentioned several times, the Board of Supervisors is going to consider whether to adopt those two ordinances that we talked about. There's really no legal requirement one way or the other that the board adopt or not adopt these ordinances. This is a situation where the board has a lot of discretion, and that's consequently why the public has really the most ability to influence the outcome here because their hands aren't tied by anything in the ordinance that they have to abide by. This is really up to them entirely. Do they want to adopt these ordinances or not? Um, their options would be they can adopt the ordinances as they are written. They could adopt them, but in a changed form. Although if they change them significantly from the form that was advertised, they'll have to have another hearing, or they can just say no and decline to adopt them entirely. How you can participate if you're interested in going to this hearing on the 27th. This will involve a time for the public to make comment. Usually it's at the end of the hearing, and it's usually everybody gets a certain amount of time. You want to make sure you know what's being decided. So again, ordinances 427 and 28. The comments should be relevant to these ordinances, and they should be concise and to the point. So since that's what's being decided at this hearing, you want to make sure that you're talking about those two things. So do you think a landfill should be a conditional use or a permitted use? And do you think that the steep slope requirement should go away for landfills? I should have mentioned earlier on, you can also find these actual ordinances on the township website. So if you want to read the ordinances, they're there. And they're pretty straightforward. They just say, like, 427 basically says landfill is permitted use. 428 basically says landfill doesn't have to comply with steep slope requirements. So if you are at the hearing and you want to make comments, know that time is often limited. 3 minutes, it tends to be typical. Sometimes it's 5 minutes. But you should consider writing a comment down and rehearsing it to sort of see how long it takes for you to get through what you want to say, because you don't want to get cut off because you ran out of time and not get to the things you want to say. It's always helpful to avoid repeating exactly the same things that other people have already said. It's always great to say, I agree with the previous comments. You don't want to be rehashing them at length. That doesn't really help anybody. If you can get organized with other people who are planning to attend the hearing, it helps to sort of plan out who's going to say what, so you make sure everything is covered and you don't have 10 people saying one thing and 0 people saying another thing. It's always helpful to make a specific ask or request, like state directly to the board, what do you want them to do? So if your opinion is, I don't want you to adopt ordinance 427, say, don't adopt ordinance 427. Usually, like for just about any governing body, they want to know like specifically what people are asking of them. They can usually figure it out based on like the general vibe of your comments, but it always helps to really tie it up and say, here is what I want you to do. Know that at this hearing that you have the option of asking questions, but the Board of Supervisors and the waste management folks, they're not obligated to answer those questions. I know that's an obnoxious feature of these hearings and of public comments. People, including me, always want there to be more of a back and forth. It's kind of not how it works. So sometimes the board will be willing to engage in that, and sometimes they just say no. They're not obligated to answer the questions, so that's how it is. Remember to remain civil. Yelling and insulting people, accusing them of, getting paid under the table by developers and all that stuff, it's usually not effective. It's not gonna get you where you want to go, and it just sort of makes the hearing last longer and degrade into like a shouting match that nobody's having fun and making any progress doing anything. So avoid that. The next thing that is slightly, we don't have a hearing scheduled for this, but it has been at least formally requested, is Ordinance 426. So this is the ordinance that would actually expand the solid waste processing and disposal district, the zoning district where the landfill is allowed, to encompass new properties. Waste Management has submitted this rezoning request, so like there is an ordinance 426. The township has not yet scheduled a hearing to consider this ordinance.
Excuse me,
Yes.
this is Jane Miller.
Yes.
Um, did the, did you get confirmation from Plainfield Township that 426 is not on the August 27th agenda?
I did not, but the public notice did not mention ordinance 426, so they legally are not able to adopt it.
Um, this is a question because since they advertised several places, is it possible if it shows up one place but not another place that they can move forward?
Uh, that would be tricky, I guess. That would be
And would they still
I don't
have
know.
time to advertise it? Because I think they have an advertisement going in tomorrow.
Um, I believe they have to advertise it twice. Um, they have to advertise it, I think, twice in two separate weeks, at least 7 days in advance. So, I mean, yeah, I guess if they publish the first notice tomorrow and the next week, they could add 426 to that hearing. And as of today, I don't believe it's been advertised, but we'll keep an eye on it. We'll talk about it now, and I guess if it comes up at that hearing, people will be ready. But as of now, they have not
Yeah,
advertised their intent to admit it or
I
adopt
want
it
to
at that hearing.
I want to move forward as if they are going to address it, just in case, okay? Because
Okay.
I haven't, I think they believe they're moving forward with it,
Hmm.
okay? Thank you so much for,
Oh, you're welcome. And that, yeah, if they do not do this on the 27th, I would expect them to probably be doing it relatively soon, so it would be good to be prepared either way. So, at some point, they will probably consider this ordinance. So currently, the property that we're talking about is zoned farm and forest, and it's designed to encourage continuation of farming and rural and blah, blah, blah. Basically, landfills are not permitted in this district, which is the important thing. So here is what the area that they're looking to rezone. It's this blue area here between Penargil Road, Delable Road, Jury Road, and Bocce Club Road. So the blue area is the entire area that they would like to rezone. It's 211 acres, consists of 18 properties that are either already owned by Grand Central or are owned by Slate Spring Farms. And this includes several areas. So like this entire thing would not be actual trash. It would include what they are calling the permit boundary. And this is a 133 acre area within the rezoning area that would be covered by a solid waste permit from DEP. And that would include the actual disposal area, as well as like roads and stormwater basins, like other things that support the disposal area but are not actual trash. And then finally, the actual disposal area, they're saying would be about 81 acres. That's the actual landfill part of it. And that it would have 50 to 100-foot berms around it, which you can kind of see on the plan here. This is all, they have not submitted actual plans or permit applications, so this is kind of hypothetical now, but this is what they're saying that they are trying, that their plan is for this area. So you would see this area that's just blue, this would not actually have landfill in it, and then the brown would be actual landfill, the green would be kind of supporting infrastructure for the landfill. This hearing would be similar to the one that's already scheduled. You could attend the hearing and make public comment, like we just talked about. Comments for this hearing should be relevant to the rezoning request. So, issues you would want to talk about is whether that location is appropriate for a landfill, how expanding the landfill would affect community positively or negatively, and also potentially whether the existing standards in the ordinance are sufficient to mitigate harmful effects. They haven't actually requested to change any standards, but if they are considering the ordinance, the public could always say, well, hey, if you're going to expand where we're going to allow landfill, maybe you want to add some new requirements. Again, the specific details of this project are not worked out. Right now, they're just looking for the zoning to say a landfill in concept could go in this area. So it's important to remember that none of what we've talked about so far constitutes approval of a specific project. So this is really just setting the rules that would apply to a landfill in the future. Anything that gets proposed on this site would still have to meet all the requirements, and there's additional approvals. So this is not the end of anything. Ooh, sorry. I thought I had an X that went over my front end loader there. Oh well. So let's talk a little bit about things that would be happening in the future. And as we get further out into the future, beyond what has been, formally requested right now, things get a little hazier. We can't predict exactly what's going to happen or when, but here's just kind of a brief overview of things that may occur in the future as part of this process. The first would be potentially a conditional use hearing. So if this property is rezoned, uh, but they decide not to adopt Ordinance 427, like if they say, okay, we'll rezone this property, but the landfill is going to stay a conditional use, that would mean that the next step for a landfill proposal would be a conditional use hearing. Uh, if Ordinance 427 is adopted and they decide to make a permitted use, this step goes away. And we talked about the conditional use hearing, how that works earlier, so I won't go into that in any more detail. And then kind of the final major thing that any development would need from Plainfield Township is called land development approval. So for this, the focus is on the site design. So like locations of structures, parking, roadways, lighting, stormwater facilities, actual waste disposal. The focus is compliance on the subdivision and land development ordinance, or SALDO for short. This is a different set of standards than the zoning ordinance. So the zoning ordinance mainly focuses on where things can be located and also certain requirements that address the fact that that use is located in that location. Land development has more to do with just how the use is developed and the different components of it on the site. This decision is made by the Board of Supervisors at a regularly scheduled meeting. It's not a hearing. It's not as formal. There's no evidence and witnesses and all this. I don't know why it's like this. This is just the law in Pennsylvania that we have these similar processes that have very sort of different ways that they happen. At this type of hearing, quote unquote, the public has the ability to comment, but not to present evidence or question witnesses. It's important to understand that neither of these processes, when we start talking about a specific proposal, it's not a public referendum or a vote on whether people like the project. So the focus is on whether what is being proposed complies with the ordinance, which is why it's so important to get the good ordinances in place at the front end. So the hearings that are coming up now, that's where all the important stuff happens because that's where we're setting the rules that will apply to any future development. Once the development gets proposed, the rules are kind of locked in, and the question is really just whether or not the thing complies with the rules. So even if everybody in town hates it with a violent passion and 200 people show up to a meeting and say, we really hate this thing, if it complies with the rules that are in the ordinance at that time, it has to be approved. So again, the important thing is making sure you get good rules. Yep, well, too far. So you may be wondering, how do you find out in the future if something like a conditional use hearing or another ordinance is getting adopted or there's a land development approval happening? How do you know when this is happening? Here's where we get into weird, archaic Pennsylvania law. So first of all, as much as we would all like to have some kind of direct contact, like a phone call or something in the mail that says, hey, something is happening in your township that you might be concerned about, like a rezoning or a landfill. That's not how it works. You very rarely are going to get that kind of direct contact. What you do have is newspapers. The law requires the township to publish notice of certain hearings in the newspaper. This includes the conditional use hearings and hearings to consider new ordinances. And they would be found in a section of the paper called legal notices. So if you get a print copy of the newspaper, you can actually open it up and find the legal notice section, and you will see all these notices. And they print new ones every day. Lucky for us, we also have the internet and this swell website called publicnoticepa.com that puts the legal notices from the newspaper online, so you don't necessarily have to subscribe to a print newspaper to find this stuff. So if you go to this website, this is actually consolidates legal notices from all across the state. So if you want to find ones for a specific municipality, such as Plainfield Township, you can put that in your keywords. You can then select the correct county. I think there is only one Plainfield Township, but if you happen to be searching for a municipality where there are many of them, like one of the 16 Franklin townships in the state, it helps to narrow down by the municipality or the county. If you want to narrow by date range, you can do that. I think it defaults to 60 days. And then you click this button, it says go, let go. And then you will get this page with all the different results. So you can see when I did this search, I got some results such as this notice that was published on August 11th in the Express Times about Plainfield Township. If you click on the view button, first you'll get one of those like prove you're not a robot pages, and then it'll show you the entire notice. So here's all the information about the Planning Commission holding a special meeting on August 18th. And again, they new notices get published every day. So if there's something you're looking for, you do have to check it pretty regularly. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but this is how it works. The township is also required to post these notices on the township building itself. So if it's easier to like go over to the building and look at the building and see the thing pasted to the window, that's an option too. We also have regular meetings of the Board of Supervisors. So this is relevant when you come to your land development application because this happens at a regular meeting. It's not a hearing, so it doesn't get published in the newspaper. Wish they would at least pick one way that we were telling people about all this, but it doesn't work that way. So if you go back to the Plainfield Township website, you can click on this button here that says BOS Minutes. You'll get to a page that lists the date for all of the regular meetings of the Board of Supervisors, second Wednesday and fourth Thursday of every month. And as long as there is an agenda for the meeting, so as long as it's not one that's in the future, you can click on the date itself and you'll get to the agenda. And if you are interested in seeing minutes of previous meetings, they're over here on the right side. Usually the minutes become available publicly after they've been approved, which usually happens at the following meeting. So it'll be like a couple weeks or a month behind before the minutes get posted. And then the agenda will, once you click on it, you'll see it'll tell you when the meeting is happening, where, and then sort of go over all the things that are on the agenda for the meeting. And it's usually just like a very brief description of a thing. So we see at the meeting last night, there was a monthly update for the Grand Central Sanitary Landfill. There's not going to be any details about what that update entails. It just says this is a thing that the Board of Supervisors is going to talk about at the meeting. So if you want to know more, you have to actually go to the meeting. And the last thing to talk about as far as the local approvals go is the Planning Commission. This is a 5-member board appointed by the Board of Supervisors to advise in land use matters. The important to remember that the Planning Commission is an advisory role only. They do not actually make any final decisions. They review different types of applications and ordinances. They consider them. They tend to do a little bit more back and forth with the applicant and developer to kind of work out the kinks. And then they ultimately make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, or in some cases, the Zoning Hearing Board. The Board of Supervisors takes it under advisement. They don't have to take the recommendation. They can do their own thing. So this is really just advice only. The Plainfield Township Planning Commission meets on the third Monday of every month at 7. They should have the agendas on the website, but they don't, so I cannot tell you how to get this information. You, I guess, will have to pester the township to find out what's on the agenda for a planning commission. And I know we are coming up on an hour here, so very quickly, I wanted to go over approvals that would be required from the Department of Environmental Protection. So this is in addition to all the approvals that the township would have to grant to make this landfill a reality. These processes can happen in parallel with the local approvals. Usually applicants wait until the local approval gets to a certain point where they're like reasonably confident that the project can go forward before they put time and money into DEP stuff. But they can actually do this in any order they want to. This is going to be very brief because a lot of this, the DEP stuff it's very technical and I don't have a ton of experience with it. But just very broadly, there are 3 types of permits that a landfill would require from DEP. There's a waste management permit, what's called an NPDES permit, and air quality permit. The waste management permit is the permit to actually operate a landfill. So DEP would take a bunch of information about the soil, the water, the geology, the liner that's going to go in the landfill, the leachate control, just like how they are going to go about operating a landfill. They will compare that against state regulations, which are very detailed and generally address things like water quality, air quality, noise, and the operations of the landfill. They'll determine whether or not the proposal complies with those regulations, and if it does, they will get a permit. If not, they will not. Next is what is called a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination, or NPDES permit. Very unwieldy name and acronym. This is the permit that addresses water pollution, essentially. So for a project like this, you would need 2 different kinds, essentially. There's one that would address the discharge of the leachate and other wastewater from the site. So like all the trash juice that seeps down into the landfill, how is that going to be treated so that it's not going to harm anything, the surface or the groundwater, and what are they going to do to make sure that before that gets discharged anywhere, it's treated and there's no pollutant in it or anything. The other kind would deal with stormwater. So that is the rain that falls on the site and then flows off of the site, because this would involve, pretty dramatically changing what the land looks like. That changes how the water runs off the land and, can get pollutants into the water. So they have to prove that the stormwater running off the site is not going to cause any kind of harm to the surface waters. Essentially, this is all just to prove that any kind of discharge of water from the site is not going to harm surface or groundwater. And then we have an air quality permit. So there are many incredibly detailed regulations, state and federal, that limit emissions of various air pollutants. Um, this permit would be doing the same thing, finding out what they are proposing to do as far as potential air pollution, how it's being controlled, whether that complies with the regulations, and this would also require monitoring and control of the gas emissions. I
Can I
know
ask
very
you a
little.
question about that?
You can, but I've now told you basically everything I know about
Ah,
air permitting.
okay. I guess anytime that we have raised concerns about the existing landfill, they say, well, the sensors say there's nothing wrong, but it just stinks in our neighborhood. So, I mean, maybe that sounds like that might not be your area of expertise, but we have different opinions about what like air quality or quality air is. So,
Yeah,
how should we approach that?
this really isn't my area of expertise. I I do water, not air. Um,
Fair enough. Thanks.
I can try to find out for you, but I would have to hunt down our air quality person at PennFuture and ask what that looks like because I actually personally have very little experience or no experience, honestly, with air quality permitting.
Okay, yeah, would be interested in that if possible to follow up and probe deeper into that. Thank you.
All right. And all of this permitting from DEP, this gets very technical. It's very difficult to evaluate these applications, to identify issues with them, unless you are like the relevant kind of engineer. So it is possible for the public to participate in these processes and like they will accept public comments and hold hearings. But this, when you're getting to this point, it really, without the help of experts, it does get pretty challenging to like productively engage with these processes. Um, I think that I got to the end of my slides and I can see we're actually over an hour now. So I'm gonna stop. If people, oh, we're not over now. I don't know. Oh, it's because I logged in early. It thinks I'm here for an hour. Okay, I can stop freaking out about the time. We have some time for questions, unless the question is about air permitting. Does anybody have any other questions? Everyone has
What
fallen
would be a
asleep.
potential rationale to bring two but not three of these forward? Jane's hunch, I think I agree with that. Maybe it's the I just don't understand how you get two but not three.
Like, why are they holding the hearing on two of the three ordinances?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I mean, it could be because they don't want to, have so many things in one hearing that the hearing takes 7 hours. Uh, there could they could be sort of still working out things about the third ordinance that they're not ready to. It's not in a final form that they're ready to advertise yet. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward ordinance. I don't know what else they would be tinkering with in the language, but that's another reason why they wouldn't hold the hearing yet. So I don't know.
Thank
Those are
you.
the main reasons that I would guess, but I don't actually have insight into that question.
Okay, this is Jane. My question is, um, if they go to the hearing and they determine, okay, we're going to change this ordinance that they want permitted by right, but we're going to change the language and the steep slope ordinance, we're going to change some of that language also. Don't both of those ordinances then have to go back to the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission for review again?
Yeah, if they make significant changes to either of the ordinances as a result of the hearing, they do have to go through the process again. So the planning commissions would have to review it. They'd have to re-advertise it and hold another hearing. Which is why you rarely see this happening, but that is the process. If they do, if they decide they want to adopt something, but not exactly what's written, and something that's significantly different from what's written, then they do have to get the planning commissions involved again.
Can I ask
Right.
who determines what is a significant change?
It's like a legal determination. People can hash it. I guess it's something that would like change the effect of the ordinance. So something that goes beyond like, oh, we're fixing a typo, or this section was numbered incorrectly. That stuff probably wouldn't require re-advertising. But if you're saying, okay, instead of a permitted use, now it's a special exception, then that would probably require, re-advertising and rehearing.
Is a change like they're asking for the green light on your stoplight? Is a change like instead seeking the yellow light, or like is that does that trigger a whole nother hearing, or can they go from all right, nobody's gonna have the green light, so I guess we'll just take the yellow light? Can they do that under the
Yeah.
original advertisement?
Well, the yellow light is what the existing ordinance has. So if that's what the township wants, then what they do is just say no. We're not adopting the new ordinance, we're keeping it the way that it is.
Yeah, I might not be articulating it correctly, but Waste Management is asking for just by right use. That's what they
Yeah.
are requesting, is my understanding. But
Yes.
if it's determined, I don't know, let's just say they do cave to public pressure because everybody is concerned about that. Do they have to re-advertise to downshift to a permitted use rather than use by right?
Well, permitted use and use by right are the same thing. If they wanted to do the yellow light option, which is conditional use, that would be equivalent to just denying the rezoning request because that's what it is now.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay.
So that would essentially be it's just going to stay the same.
Right. It wouldn't exactly deny the rezoning. It would deny, they could still do the rezoning, but the rezoning, once that's through, the landfill would have to apply under the conditional use regulations, correct?
Right.
Um, because then they would remain in place, which are the same
Right.
conditions now.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, the township could opt to accept the rezoning, but reject the other two ordinances and say, okay, well, we'll rezone this new property, but we're not changing the rules at the same time. It'll be under the same rules that already apply in the existing zoning ordinance. So the landfill is a conditional use. You have to abide by all the steep slope requirements, but you can, under those requirements, build this landfill in this new place.
I just, I don't know if this is your area, but just looking at that steep slope maps, would they be able to put the landfill in there if the steep slope requirements remained the way they are?
Uh, it does look like it would be an issue. They might be able to do like a smaller footprint. I don't really know anything about landfill design and like how easy it would be to work around those requirements.
I think in that
But
case, they would have to go to the zoning hearing board.
yeah, I guess they could be asking for a variance.
Right.
I mean, clearly they think it's a problem, or else they wouldn't be asking to eliminate that
Correct.
requirement. I don't know how much of a problem it is and how easy it would be for them to get around it.
My question is this, what is the What is leading you to believe that according to the advertisement, they're only planning on dealing with ordinance 427 and 428 on August 27th? I have
Uh,
read the hard copy of that advertisement, and that's not the impression that I'm getting.
No, I think it says they can vote.
I think the advertisement I found
It
only
includes
mentioned,
426.
does it? Because the one I found uh, did not include 426.
Well, the one I have reviewed is was in the only major newspaper in the Lehigh Valley.
I gotta say this, the morning call version of both 427 and 428. For 427 in the Express Times, it has at the bottom, it has the date 2024 where you attest to it. And it has the line, about the strike through and underlining. Okay. And then the one that's in the morning call, at the bottom where you attest to it has 2025, and the wording for strike through and underlining are not present. So I think what happened was in the one newspaper, they sent the version that had the strike through and underlining, although it doesn't show up, which was one submitted in 2024 that they then took and did some revision to. But then when they submitted to the morning call, it must have been submitted so that that wasn't showing up anymore. And they put the attest date at 2025. And that's in both 427 and 428. I don't think it's enough to upset the process so that they couldn't have the hearing.
Yeah, I just, yeah, I've found, I mean, I don't have, a print subscription to either the Express Times or the Morning Call, but the ones that are available on this website, I can only find notices pertaining to 427 and 428.
I will
With,
assure you, the August 8th edition of the morning call clearly presents ordinance 426 as well.
huh,
I look,
Does not in any way, shape, or form indicate that on August 27th, only 427 and 428 are open for discussion.
but I'm going to tell you online, I have looked on Lehigh Valley Live. I have used the website that Bridget gave you. It's nowhere to be seen. It isn't
yeah,
anywhere to be
this
seen.
is this probably the solution is to contact the township and figure out what's going on.
I think they,
I think there's an inconsistency here in the advertising.
it would,
Yeah.
I'm going to say that there is inconsistencies, and I don't know how it works if it shows up in one place but it doesn't show up in another place, because I check all the time, every day. And Bridget, you've checked and you've got the best website, I think, because it combines all the newspapers and it's not showing up. And
Yeah, I guess
have
I don't know what the outcome is if
Well, we'll get an
advertising
opportunity
in multiple
tomorrow.
places.
I mean, tomorrow's 7 days, so it should be published for the second time tomorrow.
But you are right, Terry. Does it say, well, it does say to consider the enactment. Hold a duly advertised public meeting to consider the enactment of the proposed ordinance. So it's a public hearing, public comment, and the possibility of them voting on 427 and 428. And it remains to be seen. I think we have to be cautious and be prepared either way, because I don't know what's happening with 426 at this point.
Well,
If they made a big enough mistake in advertising this incorrectly, if they got it right in at least one paper, does it sufficiently meet the requirements for them to proceed? Or if they
No.
have caused confusion by advertising it incorrectly in one of the other papers, does that give us justification to say, like, you have to start over?
They need to be consistent.
Yeah, I actually don't know the answer to that because I think this is the first time I've encountered a municipality that is publishing the notices in multiple places.
I think any attorney that specializes in land use is probably going to tell you that that advertisement better be consistent across all publications. And I think they use 4 publications in this case.
Yeah.
And I am telling you, the morning call would lead anyone to believe that 426 is up for discussion and up for a vote, just like 427 and 428.
Not online, it isn't.
I don't care about
Well,
online. I have the hard copy in my hands and I know what the hard copy says.
Well, I think we've sufficiently established that there is some confusion and some inconsistency between the notices. I think the best course of action would be to contact the township, alert them to the state
I
of
would
affairs.
advise anybody that gets the morning call to go to page 8 of the sports page for the August 8th publication. They have not only presented the ordinances, they presented the map, the zoning map of Plainfield Township, and they also presented the landfill map, that one of which you have shown here tonight as well.
Well, I got to tell you, Terry, more people get, the Express is only online. You don't get a newspaper.
Correct. That's why I start
Okay.
out by saying the only major published newspaper that exists in the Lehigh Valley.
Right. So the majority of
morning
people,
call.
both the morning call and the Express, the majority of people rely on online. So if it doesn't show up online, but it shows up in the one delivered, I don't see how that works. I really don't.
I see that as a problem.
Yeah, I see it as a problem too. Okay, and so, it was right of Bridget to believe, absolutely right, because I've gone to the site and it does not show up. It absolutely does not show up online on either Lehigh Valley Live or on her site.
Well, then let me suggest this.
She gave us.
Tomorrow morning, there will be a morning call with a date of August 15th on it. There will be a hard copy. Maybe it would be wise for people to go out and buy a hard copy. It probably will be on the back page of the sports page again for reasons I don't understand, but that's beside the point. And see what it says. But the morning call advertisement tomorrow better say the same thing that the morning call advertisement said on the 7th.
And that's fine, but I still think it's inconsistent and should be challenged.
It absolutely is.
It should be challenged.
That's
That's
absolutely
my opinion. It should be
You need a
challenged.
land use attorney to take a look at it.
Yeah.
I am a land use attorney,
Well, I know you are,
and yeah,
but
it is
you
it is
can't-
wonky.
But you're answering the question now, Bridget, based on what you've seen online. So you can't, there's nothing wrong with what you've said here tonight. But if you were to look at the hard copy that I have in my hand,
And
you
nobody
might
would
all of a
know,
sudden change your mind, correct?
Right, yeah, it's clear that there, if what you're saying about the hard copy is true, then we do have some kind of inconsistency that kind of throws this all into a state of confusion about what the board actually plans to do on August 27th. So I think the best thing to do would be to contact the township and say, and ask them, are you going to be considering ordinance 426? Is that your plan? And then as a separate issue, there could be, some kind of legal action regarding the improper notice. But I think a better thing would maybe be just to find out what they intend to do, or at least alert them to the fact that there seems to be this inconsistency, so they can decide, oh, maybe they just want to re-advertise it or something. I guess we're on to 7:08, so I think unless folks have any additional questions, we'll wrap things up. Um, I believe we've recorded this, so we will send the recording out to anyone who signed up for tonight. And I believe, uh, I guess let me put my email address into, how do I chat with everybody? Uh, that is my email address, so if anybody has any additional questions, that you can contact me and ask me those questions. Okay.
okay.
And this, oh yeah, I see people are also requesting the actual slides, so we can probably make that happen. And yeah, so thank you all for coming tonight, and have fun at this exciting hearing coming up.
It's concerning to us. It's very concerning.
Yes, I'd
So
hope.
it really is. It's